Are you juggling between the demands of your own healthcare business as well as being a parent? Tune into today's episode as you discover the effective strategy of mastering the balancing act between success in your home as well in your boardroom. Welcome to Provider's Edge, the podcast that helps healthcare entrepreneurs and innovators break down barriers and control their business, life, and future with valuable action steps. With me, your host, Sabrina Runbeck, a recovered clinician and a business deal catalyst. Let's rewrite the rules and create a positive social impact while increasing your profitability. Hello. Today, we have Jamie Vollmoeller. She is a clinical therapist, a radio show host, and a mom, and of course, someone who's passionate about mental health because she has experience too through PTSD and ADHD. Jamie is on a mission to remind moms and parents that you are good enough. Jamie has worked extensively with individuals who are experiencing emotional triggers, irritability, low self-esteem, and feeling disconnected from themselves and those around them. And she runs 2 clinics in Missouri and New York. Thank you so much, Jamie, for joining us.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'm so excited to be here.
We always love to have great healthcare entrepreneurs and who are clinicians and leaders in our field. So share with us, who are the typical people that you like to collaborate with, work with, and how is your particular solution are making a difference in the healthcare and wellness space right now?
So I would say our ideal client for pretty much everyone in both of my clinics are chronic people pleasers who don't feel good enough. So a lot of them have had abuse in childhood or are children of alcoholics, perhaps. So they just have this chronic sense growing up that they were never enough or they're not meeting expectations. And they just kind of dim their own light, right? And kind of live their life trying to constantly get that external validation, which never seems to come. And it's really interesting because I've worked from clients like, I started out with kids. So I've worked with kids as young as like 4, and I've worked with people like well into their 80s. And what I found is like, no matter how old someone is, it's always like, when I'm working with a 60-year-old woman, which I currently have a woman that I'm working with that's around that age, she'll say like, my whole life, I've just felt like I've tried to make everyone else happy and it never works. And I'm so miserable. So it's really helping these people learn how to live their own lives, like stand in their own glory and their own self-worth, right? So that they know that they are good enough despite anyone says, whatever happens in their life, whatever challenges they're facing, like you have the internal resilience to overcome that and learning to really accept yourself, like flaws and all. So I got a little bit off track, but it's chronic people pleasers and people who don't feel good enough within themselves, which is why I'm so passionate about moms in particular, because I feel like as females in general in society, we are just taught a curriculum that is that we are supposed to be the caretakers. We are responsible for everyone else's needs. If you take care of yourself, then you are selfish. If you put your needs before others, then you are like in some way not good. And if, especially nowadays, right? Like our parents growing up, or not even really my parents, my mother's parents, the woman was home and had to take care of everything. Well, now most of us are working, and if not one job, it's multiple jobs, and we're responsible for our children, and we're responsible for the household chores, and we're responsible for like all their medical appointments and everything under the sun and all of our spouses' stuff. And it's like, there's these crazy unrealistic expectations for women that just foster this internal belief system that you're never going to measure up. And that really can affect someone's self-confidence. It can affect and that self-confidence is so important, right? Because it's the risks you take, which you definitely know as an entrepreneur, Sabrina, like if you are confident in yourself and you're confident in your own abilities and you don't need that validation from others and can listen to your own voice of what's going to serve you, you're going to go a lot further. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. I think all of us, doesn't matter if you are entrepreneur, you're a healthcare leader, and even a mom, that the roles that we play is piece of our identity and a place that we choose. And some
Yeah.
people could say, well, I didn't choose that. Right. And then on the whim, I got promoted to this position, or I really didn't want to work for anybody else because the healthcare system is so restricted. I see the value in open up my clinic, and that's how I get there. No matter
Yes.
what the path is, we can still figure out what works really well for us and not have these thoughts of feeling like, well, there's 10,000 things out there that I'm responsible for, and then putting a lot more pressure on ourselves. And definitely, yes, especially women tend to take on the weight of their whole family and weight of not only making sure they are okay at functioning at baseline.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't remember what that baseline even means to them, and they just keep going.
Yeah.
However, if we don't understand how to level up our performance as the individual to best treat ourselves, then it's really hard to pour anything out to anybody else in our environment. So for you to be able to identify concentrating on both mom and the professional women, and I think that's really amazing to have that clear understanding on who you wanted to work with, because then we simply attract the right people to our circle that are in that right support system.
Oh my God, yes. And that like my ideal client honestly changed over time, like as my knowledge as a clinician grew and as my life experience just kind of changed, right? So when I became a mom, my son Michael has sensory processing disorder. So he is brilliant. He's 5 years old. He's super smart. He's super verbal. He met all his milestones early, but his fine motor skills are very, very low. And he has like sensory input issues, which means that he is sensory seeking. So he's a little more aggressive. He's a little more rough because he doesn't quite sense that you're bear hugging me a little too tight. Um, and it's caused a lot of issues for him. And I had all the same issues as a kid. And as a child, I was diagnosed autistic, ADHD, like all of these things, which clearly, ADHD I have, but I'm not on the spectrum. But a lot of that was because I had this underlying diagnosis. And I had a mother who was very young, who came from a very traumatized past, and a father who came from a very traumatized past. And they didn't know how to handle a kid that was just like screaming because the lights were too bright or their socks weren't going on right? So it became really interesting to me when I became a mom, because I'm a therapist and I always worked with kids. When my son had these issues and started to have these challenges, I like basically coached him through it like I would any of my children clients, and like gave him coping skills and got on his level and just approached him very differently than I was approached as a kid. And then this idea started to click with me of like, working with kids, the hardest part for a therapist is oftentimes you get parents that bring their kid in and they're like, my kid is the problem, fix the problem. I'm not the problem. And that's a really hard selling point because most, not that the parent is the problem, but the parent is part of the problem at least, right, guys? Because if the parent, especially for kids who function well at like school and activities, if there's an issue at home, it's probably because of something of the structure in the home, right? And for parents who will be like, oh, well, this kid grew up fine and this one's totally messed up. It's yeah, your kids have different needs. They're not the same human. They have different personalities, they have different flaws, they have different strengths and weaknesses, and you have to kind of scaffold that, right? We shouldn't be comparing them anyway, but all parents unfortunately do that. So learning, I just, when I realized that if someone just went to my mother, because I've been in therapy since I'm 8, and said, hey, I know you've been bringing this kid to every therapist under the sun, but maybe you should work on your anxiety. And that would help her to manage her anxiety. Because it's not that my parents didn't try. My mom brought me to a million therapists, a million specialists. Like she really wanted to do the right thing. She really wanted to get help. She wanted to do better than her generation, as all parents do. But she didn't have the skill set. She couldn't stay emotionally regulated when I was dysregulated. And as a child who is dysregulated, when your parent is emotionally dysregulated, you're never going to regulate. They're your safe space. Like thermometer for the world is like, is the world safe or is it not safe? And if your parent is freaking out and you're freaking out, how is a 5-year-old supposed to calm down? Like that's never going to happen. So unfortunately, I was a kid that screamed for hours and hours and hours and would headbang and bite. And I was thrown out of like 3 preschools, like just a really rough kid. I'll give my mother that. I was rough. But the difference between my son and me is like night and day. Like he has issues, but my son will literally come up to me and be like, Mom, I need a hug, or I'm upset. I need to take space. I'm going to go to the calm down corner and go pet my sensory pillow. And I'm like, that's a great idea, kiddo. You know, like he can communicate that, but that's because he was taught the skills to do that. And that his mother learned to be emotionally regulated enough to help him co-regulate, which is a major part of parenting that I feel like we're just not taught. And especially if you grew up in a household where there was a lot of yelling or there was DV or mental health issues or substance abuse, you don't have that perfect ideal parent to model after. So where do you learn how to do that? And I work with so many moms who come to me because they're like, not even because of their careers, but because like they're super successful in their careers because that's where they feel in control. And in their personal life, it feels so out of control because we're just in a different headspace when with our family than we are in a clinic. You know, like it's just a different space.
Today, we discussed how we can discover the true essence of self-worth transcends the exhausting race to meet other people's expectations. It's about breaking free from the cycle of chronic people-pleasing and unrealistic societal demand, especially parental among women. This journey towards self-acceptance and empowerment is crucial, offering a path away from emotional exhaustion and toward embracing one's authentic self. Yes, I'm speaking to you, who you truly are, and we should honor that. It's a transformation that demands recognition one's inherent value, perspective, gifts, geniuses, independent of the external validation, leading to a life enriched by self-compassion and resilience. Hey there, fellow healthcare entrepreneurs. Reach out to me, Sabrina Runbeck, on LinkedIn. Let's connect and explore how we can elevate your healthcare business. Now, let's dive into the second half of our show. And then I wanted to also emphasize for everyone who's listening, the same dynamic applies to any business and organizational function as well, because everyone is watching you, even though you don't think you're being watched. Just like your kids are watching you, are mimicking, because we're all social beings, right? Humans don't function that well, unfortunately, by themselves. Some of us learned really well to be alone and not feel lonely, but that's the acquired skill. And so everyone actually is monitoring and seeing how do we fit into each other. And as a leader, you technically, all your executive teams, all your managers, all your doing, the admin staff, everyone is almost like that kid who's looking up to you. And how you're interacting, right, with your executive, with everybody else, is how they're going to feel supported or disconnected with you and the whole company in general. So it's not to say, how can we just simply give tools to our kids, to our staff, right? There's a lot of talks HR not getting the right people, or we can't retain people are leaving. But have we thought about all of us need to take ownership on, are we all up leveling and being the peak performer, right? So now I wanted to transition into, I know every company, right, every venture has its milestones, And you
Yeah.
certainly had some, right? You opened up more than one clinic in two different states. And so, what are some of the major success milestones that you have been created so far?
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, so I started out in New York. I'm a New York girl. I had a insurance-based private practice, and then I expanded to group. And then I took an EMDR training and literally fell in love and trained my whole staff and was like, our marketing is way off. This training is really expensive, but it's really powerful. And I'm super passionate about it and I want to go with that. So we had to change our whole model, which was a really scary endeavor. The staff were not happy. I work with a bunch of bleeding hearts. We're all social workers. We all are like, everyone should get healthcare. We shouldn't do this. And I'm like, yeah, but we can't provide the best care if we can't afford to take these trainings to get the skills that we need to really help people in a timely fashion so they're not struggling, right? And it took a lot of work to get the staff on board. And that goes back to what you were saying about the parenting. It's like, I think that's one of my biggest successes is my ability to create culture. The other business I own in Missouri was founded by a colleague of mine who is neurodivergent, and struggles with the people management aspect. She doesn't get that relational piece as well as I do. And it was severely affecting her business. So she called me in January and was like, I need you to just come run this for me. I will give you like whatever percentage you want. Just come and fix this because you're magic. And I was like, you're crazy. But I went all in and now the ship is steered right and we're back to profitable. And that was a really big thing. We got back to a level of, negative 20 a month to like positive 20 a month in like a 6-month time frame, which is really, really huge. But a lot of that had to do with culture building and getting everyone on board with your mission and like what you stand for and why you're doing this. And when you can sell that to your staff, right? Like when they are on board with those missions, the vision, the values, it is just so much easier. Everything starts flowing down the river in the same direction. And you don't have to work so hard to, get everyone to go in that direction. I will say it took a lot of weeding out. Some people are not going to be the best fit for that. And as an entrepreneur and someone who's like constantly feels not good enough, that was personally a struggle for me. It was like, oh, I guess I'm a bad boss and I need to do this and I need to do that. And I came to accept the idea that like, no, this is my practice and this is how I want to run it. And the people who are on board with this mission and want to find alternate ways to help underprivileged people and eventually create a nonprofit when we have enough money to do that, or at least a nonprofit sector of our business, then we do that. But first, we have to get to a level of profitability where we can eventually fund that, right? And one of the other big things we did was create an internship program. When we made that transition over, part of our give back to the community was creating an internship program where we have clients that come and see us for either ridiculously like $25 a session, or some of them are like just absolutely nothing, just to help that community in getting quality care. Because even our interns are EMDR trained because we're so passionate about it that we're like, no, we're going to train you from the beginning so you know what to do and you're helping people the right way from the beginning. Because our schooling as social workers is so vague. It is so vague that the majority of your learning really comes from your own self-determination, what trainings you take. And in the social work field, I think the frustration with therapy is people feel like I go in and talk to a friend, right? And I think that a lot of that has to do with lack of clinical skills. And that's not because people don't want to be good clinicians, but when you come out of grad school making $40,000 a year, it's really hard to take those trainings that are really going to level you up. And unfortunately, the nonprofits don't have the budget because mental health is paid so low to pay for these trainings that are really impactful for our clients, which is why I think there's a lot more practices that are owned by maybe clinical psychologists and things like that that are into like neurofeedback or these higher level brain-based trainings. And I wasn't for that. I was like, I don't care that I'm a social worker. I have the same ability to treat people that they do, and I will find another way. And I think that's a really beautiful part of entrepreneurship and learning to just accept yourself and overcoming your trauma, because trauma also gives us that ability, right, to problem solve really effectively, because to survive life, you have to be able to problem solve and find a way out. There is no just give up and die, or you might not get fed that day, or your needs aren't.
Exactly.
The intricacies of parenthood offers a unique lens on self-worth, revealing the profound impact of our unresolved issue on the next generation. And actually, there's always a generational differences, no matter whether we are speaking to our elderly or those who are younger than us. This realization opens the door to breaking harmful cycles, fostering a legacy of emotional intelligence and self-acceptance. Similarly, entrepreneurs harness personal struggle as fuels for impactful ventures, transforming advocacies into innovations. This narrative champions the power of personal growth and the positive ripple effect it creates, urging a collective embrace of our authentic journey toward fulfillment and societal contribution. If you haven't done so already, subscribe now for the latest insight and actionable tips from our expert speakers. Let's rewrite the rules for your business and create a positive impact in healthcare. Back to the show.
You cannot believe there's always a back door, right? Or if you constantly leave yourself a back door, then there's no forward motion because there's a safety blanket somewhere in our life. And something else that you said really critical is that you help your friend to level up that clinic from a negative profit to a positive margin of 20%. And what we see a lot with our client is that, especially as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you do have to find people who are outside of your expertise. And then we see that three persona, the visionary, right? People who has a really driven goal. You see it like yourself in the right now, the new way that you're dealing with clients, having the weekends instead of just one off, right? And then to be able to treat them the best. Now you also need the connector, because not everyone is great at verbalizing, creating influence, knowing who to connect with, bring on board, right? That whole culture building, it's a lot of deeper work and does take set of skill set and personality and drive to get there. And then you need a third person, what we believe is that implementer, right? The strategic conductor who actually make things happen. Because if we're just thought, here, let's do this, right? Like la la land, and you never get down to the reality of the step by step, then we're also not making any strides. So I love that you guys are able to find the different pieces and then be honest with yourself, your current team, the wrong person, they do need to let go so it doesn't drag down the rest of the team, and the people on the same mission can continue to flourish and grow. So that being said, every company has its up and downs. So what are some of the growth pains that you guys have been able to overcome and navigate through?
Honestly, girl, this year was our worst, or this past year was our worst year. And a lot of that had to do with in my personal life before I had infrastructure set up. So when I was first running what was then Suffolk Family Therapy, it was me. I had a receptionist at that time, but I was still the biller. I was still the supervisor of everyone. I still signed off on everyone's notes. I did all of the staff meetings. I had my own caseload of 20 clients. And by the way, I had a infant and a 3-year-old at home by that time. So I had a lot on my plate, and my sister-in-law moved in with her kids. She was leaving a DV situation. So we took them in, and it was more than I could have imagined that I was biting off. But as a helper, and like I'm very much of the family is family and you do for family, and God blessed us with enough resources that we can help, so we should help. I just kind of powered through. But I did and I didn't, right? Because there's only so much that your body can take. And as a person who's diagnosed with PTSD, to kind of relive a lot of that with when she came in, her and the kids were very traumatized, and it was very triggering for me, for my kids, for my husband. I started having panic attacks, and then I couldn't get all my job responsibilities done. And that's when the light bulb, like when stuff hit the fan and I was like, oh my God, we're in a hole. We've been on a friggin' rocket trajectory this whole time. And now we're in a hole because I stopped tracking everything, because I was also the KPI tracker. I was the everything, which is a terrible business idea, guys. So once I realized that, and my team realized that, and I love my team. They stepped in and were like, we're going to have backups for all of these things and create all these systems. And, you can't handle every task under the sun. So we're going to help you delegate. And that's another problem of people pleasers, right? We struggle to ask other people for help because we feel that we should be able to do it. So if you ask for help, it's defeat, which is the mindset, which is, distorted. But I struggled with that. So around December, we rechanged everything. We're finally out of our hole. And that took a lot of staff turnover too, because we also were like realizing that once we decided to go down the EMDR route, we weren't getting the kind of calls for the clients that were really our ideal clients. So we're like, well, this is a compounding issue now that we have all of these clients that are calling that want services, but they're not the ideal fit for the kind of work we want to do. And to me as an entrepreneur, part of making a really good culture and team is having a client base that your staff is happy with, right? If I have clinicians that have to see people an hour every single week, you kind of want to try to make like at least the majority of their caseload people that they are going to be like excited to see. You don't want every case to be like a nightmare. That's not a good feeling when you go into work and every case is different. It also makes it really hard for those clinicians to build up those skills. So this past year, we put a lot of systems in place. We changed a lot of things. It's also that my operations director and my clinical director both got pregnant. So after we put all these systems in place, then they kind of bowed out. So that slowed things down. My operations director, oh my God, is back next week on Monday. I'm so excited. And I was talking to her today and I was like, Emily, I can't wait for you to get back and help me with like all the organization and the structure, because I am an implementer, but I'm also kind of a visionary. I do a lot of both, but I'm very good at like, if you give me a task list, I'll just run down that task list. Like my business coach says to me all the time, like, I don't know how you get these things done in these timeframes. And I'm like, I set a goal and I do it. And I set a goal for my team and they do it. And I think that's a New York mindset. We're just like, no, we'll get it done. And we have overarching financial goals that kind of motivate us to get to that point too. And changing the structure of our pay to reflect that also helped, because in my ideal situation when I was starting out, I wanted everyone to be salaried, which is very foreign for group practice because there's a lot of liability involved with that for a very small business. And I was like, no, like if people just meet their goals and meet their quotas and they're not unrealistic quotas, like it's way less than I saw when I was at the clinic, like we'll be fine. But unfortunately, people are not motivated like that. So we had to kind of change pay structures to reflect, like, if you're not meeting your client quotas, you're not going to get paid the same as if you are. And that also kind of helped us this year as well. It was a rough year, but I'm super excited about this next year because my team is finally all back in place and we have a roadmap and we're ready to go. And that's just an amazing feeling when you have the right people around you. You have those people that can be like, here, delegate this out. And even for me, like with the culture building, I'm too much of a mom is actually what Emily says. She's like, you're the mom. Elizabeth is the co-owner of my Missouri company, Brave. And she says that all the time. She's like, you're the mom, you're the nurturer. And I'm like, yeah, but people need to be nurtured, right? And I think that's why people follow me, because I'm very nurturing and giving in my spirit. I'm a very genuine human. But there's a bad side to that when you're running a business, because you can't operate a business with your heart. It also has to be with your head. And there was a lot of decisions that I also made last year that I knew were bad business decisions. But because of the personal relationship I had with employees and knowing their personal circumstances, I had a harder time holding those boundaries, which is why the lovely Alex and Emily now they literally came to me, Sabrina, and were like, you are no longer in charge of hiring. You are no longer in charge of like disciplinary action because you are too much of a bleeding heart. And we're all going to lose our jobs because you can't let people just work while we're in the red. Like you can't just let them coast. It's their life situation. And I'm like, but it hurts. And they're like, yeah, so we're just going to be the dad and you could be the mom. But like, if someone asks you a question and you know it's bad business decision, because I know you know that in your brain, you go, I need to ask Emily. And that's literally since probably June. That's what I've been doing. I'm like, I'm not sure. I need to ask Emily.
That's a great practice, especially when I was talking about different persona, right? And when you're so self-aware, but you don't want to hurt other people, then you can use that as a leverage to say, well, this company is not just me. And even when the company is you, you should still have the sensibility to say, let me check with my CEO. Let me check with my CMO. Let me check with that person, because why do you even have them if they're not there to help you, right? We don't have to know everything, and we don't always to say our heart, our intuition sometimes is right. We do have to trust that. However, it's not to say we trust it out of blindly of how we're driving by emotion. That's all human. So that also leads us to the next question before we wrap up, as we're all very much supportive community, healthcare leaders, entrepreneurs, that we're there, we're givers. So what do you want our community to support you with?
So that's a great question, Sabrina. I was not expecting that question. I would say if everyone would like to follow my podcast, I have a podcast that's called Good Enough with the Trauma Therapist. It's very much just about how to feel better about yourself and like tips and tricks, to help you feel better about yourself, set better boundaries, learn like better self-care. And the other thing is that we are doing a pop-up like workshop where we're going to teach, it's specifically designed for our ideal client, which is professional mothers. That's going to teach them how to learn about how to make themselves feel good enough as they are, to accept themselves, flaws and all. So the workshop goes through what's kind of what we touched on in the beginning, like societal expectation and how that shapes how we see ourselves in the world, how to set better boundaries and self-care. And then treatment methods that really work if you've tried to set boundaries. Because one of the things, it's not that people don't try to get better. And I want to make that really clear. Most of my clients who come to see me for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing have been in therapy for a long time and are very frustrated with the fact that they don't feel like they're making significant improvement. And that's because most therapies are not brain-based modalities. They're not shifting the way information is stored in your brain. They're not shifting those neural connections. And CBT does that, but it takes a very, very long time. And if you're someone who's struggling with panic attacks, or if you're a mom that like every time your kid starts screaming, you start screaming and then you feel terrible about yourself because you're like, I'm being my parents, right? Like you don't want to wait years to fix that because your kid doesn't have years. Like you're going to traumatize that child. One of the things that we do is we offer EMDR intensives, which can be done over 3 to 5 days to accelerate that process. And the beautiful thing about that is usually in therapy, most people go either during the workday or like right after work before they go home. But the problem with this and doing deeper work is that you really need to allow yourself to go there. You need to allow yourself to access that deeper inner part of you and see things that are really, really difficult to deal with. And to do that from week to week and reopen up that trauma can be very difficult if you're working through sexual abuse or suicide or significant grief and loss or domestic violence. Like to relive that tragedy over and over again, week to week, is very, very hard and can increase your symptoms. Right? Even if afterwards you don't have any flashbacks, nightmares, and it's beautiful afterwards, who wants to struggle with that for 2 months? Moreover, who can afford as a working professional mother, to struggle with that for 2 months, it's hard, and it's not feasible for most people. So what we offer is intensive treatment as well as individual weekly sessions. But I really try to push the intensive treatment for people who don't have the time, or don't have the bandwidth to do that, or know that they can't be that much more out of their window of tolerance. And we partner with local hotels and bed and breakfasts to put people up so that they have a nice, relaxing environment. We come to them so that they can really like take a chill pill, right? Like, because again, if you're going home to your kids, you're not going to go there. If you give yourself just 3 days to focus on you, you can help to lower that anxiety from a level 10 to a level 5 and have it stay there, so that every time your kid screams, it's not that your skin is crawling and your chest is tight and you want to like rip your hair out. It's like, okay, I could take a deep breath and now I'm regulated and I can co-regulate my kid. And the difference is just astounding. And we also have ways to finance that, because insurance does not cover EMDR intensives, unfortunately. Maybe in the future they will, but as of right now, they will only cover maybe an hour a week of therapy if you're lucky. Most of them really only like to cover 45 minutes. So we partnered with Care Credit so that our clients who cannot afford to pay those fees upfront in a lump sum can finance it and pay it off over 6 months, 0% financing. So it fits more into their budget, and they can get the care and the healing that they need immediately instead of waiting years or not going. Because let's be honest, most people just won't do it. Like, you could try to go to therapy for weeks, but you go to therapy, and then how many times do you go to a therapist and talk about surface level nonsense that is absolutely not the reason you're in therapy? Or you talk about like the surface level issues that are like the blips, like just that trauma coming back up, but you never go deeper to really uproot the real issue. And to me, that's the work that we're doing. We're pulling things out by the roots so that it doesn't grow back. And traditional therapy to me felt more like a lawnmower where I'd go in every week and I'd be at a 10 and I'd talk to my therapist and feel better, and the grass was cut, and then it would grow up and I would need my therapist again and the grass was cut. And this way it's like you just learn how to regulate better. And what starts to happen when you make new connections in your brain and your brain isn't focused on those negative things is, even after treatment, your brain is now trained more to focus on the positive things that are going right, which really helps you to, further that work outside of therapy. So, if anyone wants to go to our website at www.liemdr.com, they can check out our intensives or give us a call. Would love to help more people to achieve healing quicker, because, having significant symptoms that are affecting your relationships, your job performance, like all of that costs time and money. And I personally can't think of anything I would rather spend my money on than making sure that I am the best mom that I could possibly be, because I just don't want to repeat the same mistakes that my parents made, well-intentioned, but it still did damage. And to me, that's like the whole thing, is just how do we create a generation that has less trauma, that feels more empowered, that is able to tap into their inner strengths, really, and like focus. If everyone in the world focused on what they were good at, the world would be just so much better of a place, Sabrina. And I think that
exactly. So we have to really think about like, how do we support each other? How do you support your clients, and not in the traditional way of what we are taught, but using innovative ways that we have to improve ourselves in the way that we can support them in the long run. So we appreciate you, Jamie, for sharing your own authentic way of how you've been building the ups and downs in creating your own clinic in healthcare, the challenges that we have in dealing with the insurances and choosing to not, And also supporting the patient on the paying side of allowing them to have installments and not feeling like financial is the burden that why they couldn't get treatment.
Embracing one's worth is not a destination, but a continuous journey of growth, resilience, and empowerment. As we journey, our personal metamorphosis doesn't just reshape our own lives. It casts ripples into the wider world, fostering a more compassionate and understanding society. Each step we take in acknowledging our worth is a step toward more authentic and fulfilling lives. It's a commitment to self-discovery and self-acceptance, a promise to honor our unique journey with all its twists and turns. At the end of the day, leadership truly is about leading by example. When other people surrounding you, believing in you, and those who are just get to know you, truly can see that side of authentic you, who is worthy, who believe you are worthy and accept your beautiful self, then more amazing things can happen. Here are the 5 key points we discussed today. Number 1, understanding chronic people pleasing, which goes beyond making other people happy. It's relentless quest for acceptance that leads to emotional exhaustion. Learn how to shift from seeking external approval to finding inner peace and self-satisfaction. Number 2, break free from unrealistic expectation because the society has an impossible standard, can trap women in a cycle of perpetual inadequacy. And we know women actually are much more agile and able to take on multiple tasks and challenges at the same time. Discover today as how we dived in and elaborate on liberating yourself from these pressure and embrace a life of harmony and self-compassion. Number 3, embracing flaws and building resilience. Because your imperfections is actually perfectly meant to be there. And understanding what resilience stems from acknowledging and accepting your flaws. And at the end of the day, we should pay more attention to what our genius and skill sets are and dive deeper into it and not necessarily feel like we need to fix the flaws because they are not necessarily flaws. Those areas that you are not doing well on, other people can fill those gaps. We don't have to know everything. This process paves the way for a life defined by personal strength and fulfillment, not by perceived shortcomings. Number 4, the role of parenthood in shaping self-worth. Because parenthood, especially motherhood, can reflect and magnify our own unresolved issues, affecting our self-worth, recognize and breaking these cycles to not only improve your sense of self, but also to foster a healthier, more secure generation. Number 5, turning personal struggle into entrepreneurial success. Personal adversities can be the catalyst for profound entrepreneurial ventures. Discover how your unique journey can challenge and inspire innovative solutions and create a significant impact in the world for healthcare. It's time to discover new strategies and approaches to trauma healing that can bring about a true outcome-oriented recovery for your clients desperately needing your help. Are you tired of chasing approval and feeling never quite good enough? Share your experience and insight with us by posting it on LinkedIn and tag me, Sabrina Runbeck. I would love to join you on this conversation. Thank you for tuning in to Provider's Edge podcast. We hope you enjoy our latest episode and found the insights and tips helpful. We'd love to hear your feedback on the show and learn what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. So please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and let us know what you think. Your feedback is essential to help us improve the show and provide you with the content you need to take your healthcare business to the next level. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.